All right, welcome back, guys. So my name's Anthony Chambers. I am a real estate agent here in California. And on my channel, I talk about most things that have to do with real estate, usually California real estate. So what we're going to talk about today is, can you sell your house if it's occupied with tenants? So if it's like a rental property. So let's go ahead and get that started. So can you sell a house with tenants occupying the property? And yes, absolutely you can. I've worked on a lot of sales where the home is occupied with renters, and yes, you can. But there's a couple of things you're going to want to consider. Your real estate agent may have already gone over these with you, but let me go ahead and give you my experience on it. So there's a few things you want to consider if you're going to be selling your house with tenants involved. So let's go ahead and talk about that. The first thing you want to consider is the selling price. So where I work in the markets that I work in, most of the time the buyer is going to be a person or somebody who's going to live in the property, owner occupied. They're not really looking for an income producing property or a rental property. So because of that, if you sell your house with tenants there in the property, it's going to decrease the buyer market. It's going to decrease the amount of buyers that are willing to offer on your home. And if there's less buyers that are interested in your house, what do you think that's going to do to the price? It's going to lower the price that you end up selling it for. So that's the first thing you want to consider. Are you okay with selling the house with a tenant involved if it's going to lower the price? The next thing you want to consider is access to the property. If you're renting a property, the last thing you want is inspectors coming and going out of your house, contractors coming and going out of your house, and potential buyers coming and looking around through the house. It's kind of an uncomfortable feeling. So because of that, most tenants would prefer that you schedule all of the showings during a certain time through the week or at a certain time during the day when they're not there. It's just kind of an inconvenient process for them. So because of that, some buyers want to see the house right away. Like yesterday, sometimes they'll call us, hey, I want to see the house right now. Can you be there in 15 minutes? Sometimes we can, but with a tenant, it's just not as convenient and we can't accommodate their schedule as quickly. The third thing you want to consider is maybe you want to sell the house to the tenant. I've never actually personally seen a transaction like that go completely through. However, it does set the transaction off to a good tone. If you offer it to the tenant, maybe they want to purchase it, maybe they're qualified to buy it. And if so, it's going to save you a big headache and a big amount of money if they buy it from you directly. But usually the renter is not going to complete that sale, and it could be by choice, or it could be because they don't qualify for a typical mortgage. Whatever the case is, I've never actually seen one. If you have seen that type of transaction go through personally, leave me a comment below. I'm kind of curious to see how that went. But anytime I put a house up for sale and my sellers want to leave the tenants in the property, I have never actually seen the tenant go through with the purchase. And the last thing that I want to bring up as far as selling a house with a tenant, sometimes the tenant has lived in the property for 10, 15, maybe even 20 years, and the seller has a personal connection with that person. They've seen their family grow up or them grow up for the past decade or so. So kicking somebody out or evicting somebody is not an ideal situation. It's not a fun thing to go through. So one mistake I have seen sellers make is they will offer to sign a long-term lease to the tenant and tell them, don't worry, I'm going to sell the house, but you don't have to go anywhere. We're going to sign a lease and then you're just going to be in the property at that same rent. Don't worry about it. And that is a possibility, and that definitely is an option. But going back to tip number one, there's going to be less and less buyers that are willing to inherit a tenant, especially if they're in some crazy long-term lease, maybe for a low rental payment. So to make one point very clear, somebody's going to end up paying for that. And it might not be the tenant if you give them a really low price locked in for a long lease, but you'll end up paying for it because it will decrease the value of the home and what buyers are willing to pay for it. So if they're inheriting a tenant that's locked in for 5 years, it just makes the property less desirable for a buyer to submit an offer. What about you? Have you sold a property with a tenant? If so, leave me a comment below. I'm always kind of curious to see what your experience is. And if you want to get in touch, be sure to check the description below. And I hope you found the video useful, and I hope to see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.